John, how are you, buddy?
Good morning, Brandon, or well, I guess good afternoon for you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, John. How's it going?
Good, good. It wasn't good morning, good evening, good afternoon? Wasn't that like a famous like news broadcaster?
No, it was actually, I was thinking about the Truman Show.
Oh yeah, that's right, that's
Did
right.
you ever see that movie?
Long time ago, long
I
time.
love that
Yeah.
movie. I love that movie. What a great movie. Actually, it's funny. I just watched that probably 3, 4 months ago with the kiddos.
Okay.
Nice, nice story, man. Anyways, so let's dive in here. In celebration of Canadian Citizenship Week, right? Let's talk about that. Hey, happy Citizenship Week, John. You know what? Before we dive in, let's introduce ourselves for people that haven't seen us before. But I'm sure there's a few people that have heard this more than a few times. But let's say hello. So why don't you let everybody know who John Laroni is?
Sure. My name's John Laroni. If you didn't catch that, I am located out in Surrey, British Columbia, which is a suburb of Vancouver.
Sunny Surrey, British.
Sunny Surrey, exactly. My company is Gateway Pacific Immigration. You can visit it at gatewaypacific.ca. I've been an immigration consultant for a long time. I think I'm in my 17th year now. I practice in most areas. I don't do things like refugee or sort of complex humanitarian or compassionate stuff, but everything else. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to be hanging out with Brandon and you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a long weekend here too. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Brandon Miller. I have a company called Maple Immigration Services. Strangely enough, I'm wearing the shirt today. I'm located in Toronto, Canada, and been doing this for about 10 years, I guess. Yeah, about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was working with newcomers and helping people get settled in. Which was a lot of fun. And currently, John and I, we are collaborating on something called Second Passport. What Second Passport is, it's an innovative new way to actually get through not only the immigration system, but the settlement side of things. It's based on a system called the Immigration Success System, where you can basically, it's got 3 tenets, right? 3 stages: planning, implementation, and settlement. Anyways, listen, let's leave it at that. The one thing that I want to draw your attention to, though, is on July 19th, we're running our next citizenship, our next 5-day immigration blueprint challenge. So this is for people who want to have a plan and get started on coming to Canada. Or if you're already in Canada and you don't have a plan, then you definitely need this. So if you've ever heard me speak before, or John, or anybody that actually thinks about planning and doing all of this stuff, planning is super important, guys. So having a plan at any stage and not just kind of going with how things go, very dangerous from an immigration and basically a life context. But other than that, let's dive in. So Citizenship Week. Now, we talked on Tuesday about all of that. And we talked about the benefits of it. And I actually have a few things to say about this because, well, as I always do. I see you smiling over there, John. Yeah, I got a few things to say about that. But we're going to talk a little bit today about more on the PR side and the residency requirements and some of the things that we see for people that kind of get tripped up with that. Now, I know that there's a few people watching right now live. Guys, please throw in your questions. They do not have to be on topic because we actually love questions. Or if you just want to give us a thumbs up or hearts, I know that there's one particular individual that loves throwing us hearts out there. Please feel free. Or even just say hello. All right. So you want to dive in, John?
Yeah. Well, let's just touch a little bit on last week that the benefits of Canadian citizenship. Again, once you have it, it can't be taken away unless you've lied horribly in the past on an application, or
horribly, I think, is the key word.
Yes, horribly lying is always never good in life, but especially when you are applying for citizenship or PR. You can vote. You can leave Canada for a year or 20 years, and you're always going to be a Canadian citizen and be able to come back. Visa-free travel to the majority of the world.
168 countries, buddy.
there you go. And, the ability to work on any profession in Canada, subject to professional regulation. But, and then labor mobility, to be able to the ability to work in a number of countries that Canada has treaties with, like NAFTA, CUSMA, so be able to work in the United States or Mexico, and then other treaties throughout the Americas, throughout the Asia Pacific, and with the European Union. So
yeah, the Comprehensive European Trade Agreement's a good one.
So a lot of those. But in order to get citizenship, you have to be a PR in Canada for 1,095 days, which means 3 years, and you can chop it up into bits and pieces. But in the 5-year period before you apply for citizenship, you have to have 1,095 days. Now, there's some caveats to that. Some good caveats. One, for example, is if you've been in Canada as a temporary resident, a study permit or a work permit, you can count some of that time towards your citizenship requirement. Brandon, am I correct in saying it's a half day you get to claim for every day that you've been in the country?
It's a half day for every day up to a year. So if you were here for 2 years prior to becoming a PR, your time to citizenship is 2 years as opposed to 3.
Right. So it's you can claim that, and then you got 2 years of actually being a PR. Then you've met the residency eligibility requirements for citizenship. Now, the important thing to remember is you got to physically be here. You're outside the country. Those days cannot be counted towards citizenship. So this is a problem, it's not widespread, but it is for some families where they immigrate to Canada, they get their PR, and then work opportunities overseas are so lucrative that they split. They go back to Hong Kong, Dubai, India, London, wherever they're going to go. And it's hard. I'm not judging at all. It's hard to give that up when you're making serious cash. But the problem is, it's a choice that those people make. They're not going to be able to apply for citizenship, and in some cases, they may even lose their PR status. So being physically
there's a caveat to that.
There's a caveat. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to throw your caveat in before I throw mine in?
Well, if you can count days residing abroad towards maintaining your PR status, not claiming citizenship, but maintaining your PR status, if you're living abroad with a Canadian spouse. So let's use that scenario I said before. The job in Dubai is unbelievably lucrative and you don't want to give it up. And you've gotten your PR because you married a Canadian. And then both of you go back to Dubai and you live in Dubai. The time spent in Dubai can be claimed towards maintaining your PR because you're living there with your Canadian partner, spouse.
Yeah. So there's those caveats. There's military foreign service company working, Canadian company and working with like a Canadian spouse. Those are basically more for PR stuff because you still need the physical presence for citizenship. However, it's a little less relevant now, but I've used it once. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I was actually able to get citizenship for somebody who only had 700 days and would only ever have that. Are you familiar with the coup test?
No, educate me.
The coup test. So it's found in case law, and what the coup test is. And I got another caveat today. Man, this should be called like the day of the caveats. Another caveat to that is it's a little less relevant in terms of with the new citizenship regulation or laws, regulations, or revamping of the act. But the coup test essentially was a test. I believe it was in Nova Scotia. And the guy, Mr. Coup, would never have been able to qualify for citizenship. And he was able to get his citizenship after about, I think it was 300 days. And the test is on a very simplistic level. There's 4 different layers to it. But the biggest one is like, where do you call home? Where is your significant attachment? I've actually successfully used this for a case 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, 7 years ago. something like that, a little while ago. And the guy was in a situation where his family had already become citizens. He had his residence here, but because of the nature of his work, he was not able to maintain his citizenship, which
Right.
basically means that it was impossible for him, or maintain, it was impossible for him to get citizenship. So we put in this ask, basically using the test and showing all of the different things. The application was about yay thick, and he got his citizenship, and he only had 700 days, right? So, coup test, man. KOO. Funny enough, I was chatting about this yesterday. I had a consultation with a guy from New York. And he was actually, man, I'm always impressed by people that are like so forward thinking. And he's actually looking like, 50, 75 years in advance. And he was talking about, just the nature of how things are going in the States and how, the trajectory of where things are going. And he just was thinking about his kids and grandkids and things like that. But what he was basically like, he was so methodical to the fact he's like, yeah, I'm not really interested in half days. I want to get my bang for the buck and I want to have it. But he was concerned about, if I had to go back and I couldn't maintain my residency because for citizenship, because say I had to go back for my parents or something along those lines. He was literally going down and calculating like day to day to day, which is I have the utmost respect for it, because people who think that far ahead, I really like. Anyways, let's keep moving on here. How to qualify for citizenship. So from PR. So let's go over the requirements real quick. I know we've gone over this a few times, but let's just solidify it once in there. So permanent resident, 3 out of 5 years, filed taxes, citizenship test, right? Yeah. And language skills. Do you want to talk about language skills real quick?
Yeah, sure. I mean, some people have to take the test. You can always submit proof that your secondary or post-secondary education was taken in English, and that's accepted. That's usually not a big barrier. And even then, you have to take the test, but you can take the IELTS, CELTIP, whatever. And also, there's I think there's a cutoff age, if memory serves me correctly, for I think it's over 55 or 65. You don't have to take the language test.
18 to 54.
54. Thank you. So if you're over 54,
yeah,
I think you're right. If you're over that age, if you're under that age or above that age, you don't have to take the language test. So to become a citizen, the residency requirements are the most important, the most important parts. The rest are easily taken care of.
Yeah. The other thing I want to throw in there too is if you have any questions or you want to check this out, just go to Google and type in physical presence calculator. There's a little calculator in there where you can put all that in. And if you're a PR now, seriously, when you become a PR, they've actually started giving you these little record your trips. Prior to that, I was advising clients to actually write all this stuff down. Please do this. If you take a trip, write all this down. Like the day that you left and the day that you came back. Now, here's an interesting thing is, what if you left in the morning to go to the States to go shopping and then you came back in the afternoon? Are you physically present?
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you can count that day.
Oh. You know what? I'm going to leave that. I'm gonna leave that. Let's if anybody wants to know the answer to that question, type it in the comments and I'll answer it.
Okay, wow, because I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. So
yeah, if you want to know the answer to that question, type it in the comments to this video and I'll give you the answer and I'll give you the reference to it as well.
The other thing worth mentioning about residency requirements is, for a long time, Canada kept no record of entry or exit. Especially via the U.S. border. And what you were having people who were kind of gaming the system, where they would come in and out of Canada via the U.S. border. They'd fly into Seattle out here, or they'd fly into Buffalo or New York or wherever, and they cross the Canadian border by private vehicle. And it was difficult for IRCC to determine whether or not a person actually had indeed met the residency requirements because of this gap. That's being tightened up now, and everybody should know that finally, after many years of wrangling, IRCC, CBSA, and the Canada Revenue Agency are starting to share details. So this hole is starting to be closed. So for anybody,
it's been closed. They've closed that, man. They closed that, like, well, because the U.S. and Canada were exchanging entry data. Yeah. So they were getting the exit data and the entry data, and UAE is also sharing with Canada too. You know that?
My point is, when they do this, it's never a door slammed shut and then all data is being shared. It's more an agreement has taken place, and slowly the net starts to close through.
Yeah, exactly.
Database sharing and everything. So
it's allowed to parse the info.
Yeah, so that is and that's just that's just congruent with developments in information technology and database management and so on, that it's taking place. So I'm not saying any of our listeners would ever consider.
No, John, we've got good people. We've got good people
that was a big hole in the system that's being plugged. So
speaking of good people that are listening to us, there's a few people that have given us a thumbs up or the old heart. We got a Roger Devera Datuin. I don't know if I said that right. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call you Roger. Sorry, Roger. And MD Jekir Hussein and Ola. We've seen Ola here before. Yeah. Adam's given us some love. Hey, Adam, how are you, buddy? And Rita Longo. So hey guys, thanks for doing that. We appreciate it. We appreciate you showing up and all that. If you have any questions, throw them in there. Okay, let's move on.
I got a question for you, Brandon.
Yes.
You like talking. You talk a lot.
So I do. Oh man, you just figured that out?
Yeah, but it's always informative. It's always good to listen to. But I got a question for you. So what do you do if you're a permanent resident and you're planning, you got your eye towards getting citizenship, but you're starting to find that you're asking yourself questions: am I going to make this? Am I going to make it? Am I going to be able to actually get my days and be able to apply? So any pointers for people to for planning, for documentation preservation, for record keeping, for trying to make sure to get those days in?
Funny you should ask me that question, because we've been having this conversation over the course of the week, because I'm working with a small group of like past clients. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're doing a citizenship group with that. Anyways, I'm not going to get too far into that, but I'm going to tell you something. One thing that we were discussing, and I find this a lot of people really think that once they become a permanent resident, they've arrived. And I think it's a misnomer with the name permanent, right? They think, oh, I'm a permanent resident. And I've alluded to this before, and I quote one of my clients, and he's like, yeah, I get it. I'm not really a permanent resident. I'm a permanent guest. And I'm like, really good way of putting it. And I'm going to tell you, I find that people, when they get to the citizenship side, there's a lot of like less urgency on this, right? There's such a like, yeah, I'm here. It's fine. I don't really, I'm busy. Everyone's busy, right? I get it. We're all busy, right? But, really, I really, people really need to think about that, because here's what I've seen. And I don't know if you've ever had a few of these over the years, but I've seen what happens when you actually become inadmissible to Canada after being a PR. I've seen it a couple times in my career, right? Not a lot. And everyone's like, oh, that doesn't happen to me. Nah, it's fine. I'll get to it later. I'm busy. I'm living my life, right? Got to go away. It's a long weekend. I get it. I totally get it. However, let me tell you what happens. If you don't actually take the last step and get your citizenship, then what happens is that your whole world can crumble. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but let me give you an example.
It happens. It totally happens.
I've seen it. And it's absolutely devastating. I'll give you an example. There was a guy called, who basically had a little incident. He got pulled over for a DUI. He blew over. He went and he engaged, a criminal lawyer, and it was very minuscule. Like, it was like literally got pulled over at a ride stop, and he blew over nominally. So when he got the criminal lawyer, they went to court, and it was just literally slap on the wrist, nothing. However, he got he got some correspondence in the mail, and he was found inadmissible, and it ended up into a 2-year fight, and the government was not letting it go. They were not, and I was surprised because he had 2 Canadian children here, and usually at that point it's like best interest of the child and agency and blah 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 and all that other stuff. But they dug in, and he was going out to the airport. This was in the Toronto area. He was going out to mediation things with CBSA officers, and then they were proceeding to remove him. And it was shocking. But I'll tell you what, his legal fees got caked up to about, I think it was $25K. I had to refer him off to somebody else. It wasn't my forte, but it was the amount of stress. And I'm telling you, like, honestly, like, man, get your citizenship. And I understand if you're coming from a country where, like, for instance, I have Japanese clients, they're not going to get their citizenship because they lose their Japanese citizenship, and they're not really interested in losing their Japanese citizenship by and large, I find. But there's other countries where you can have dual. And if you're in that thing, man, and you're interested in having a life here, then you need to really kind of take stock on that and think about that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that some people may take away from lack of planning is that the result is just delay. Where in a lot of times it's not just delay, it can be, in the worst case scenario, catastrophic failure. Where if you don't plan, like, so let's say you're a jet setter of a person who's working globally and is in and out of Canada constantly. You could wake up one day without the proper planning, where you land at the airport and a CBSA officer goes, "You're not going to meet the residency requirement." You get written up for what we call an A44 report in our legalese of our profession. What basically means CBSA officer goes, "Look, there's no way you can maintain your PR status. I'm sending this report off, and the ball has started rolling on stripping you of your permanent residence."
Yep.
And, to fight that with professional help, you're starting at around $8,000.
Let me tell you something else on top of that, John. It's funny because I mentioned this on Tuesday when we were talking about it. That 87-year-old Italian lady. Did I mention that, or am I just inventing this in my mind?
No.
Because I've been doing that lately, apparently. So very early on in my career, there was a woman. She came here in like the 1950s or 60s. She was like 4 or 5. She was from Italy. And she'd always been a permanent resident, and she'd never thought of it. Now, she was like 85, 87, somewhere in there. And she, as you do, you get retired, and she started vacationing down in Florida. She was spending a lot of time in Florida, more time there than she was here. She was only a PR. She came back, and she was coming through the border, and she got stopped. And the officer, and it was funny because I said, "Is he new or whatever?" Like, they Section 44 report, right? Mm-hmm. They wrote her up. She was an 87. She's freaking out. She's like, "I've only ever lived in Canada." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you ever get your citizenship?" She's just like, "I don't know. We just did this, and we just always got our permanent residency, and I had my Italian citizenship, and I just didn't really do anything with it." I couldn't believe it, because you got to think about it too in practicality. Now, I understand where the officer's coming from, because they're just exercising what the law says. But really, at the end of the day, topsy-turvy in the world and all that stuff, it kind of falls apart. So anyways, listen, we got to keep rolling here, because I just looked at the time. We've been going at this for a while, man. We've been at
in the future. I think you and I should probably sit down with everybody, and we'll talk about things that can potentially go wrong if you don't plan in this area. But that's for another day.
Can we just throw a few things in there real quick? Because while we're talking about residency with permanent residency, one of the things that I like to, that I get a lot is, oh, my my permanent residency is expired, right? Do you get that?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? Just really quickly, because I think that needs to.
My PR card has expired.
No, my PR is expired. But in actual, it should be my PR card is expired.
Yeah, the thing is that your PR can only be abandoned by you, or it can only be stripped after a long appeal process. So nobody's PR really expires. Their PR card can expire.
Right.
And again, planning, you shouldn't wait until the last minute to try and get that new PR card, but slow down. Don't freak yourself out. So because you haven't renewed your PR card does not mean you've lost your PR, right? You may want to do some research or have a consultation with someone like us to get, the answers you need, but don't freak out. A lot of times, we can get you back on track and get you a new PR card, and there's no issue.
I'm going to say two things to that. So I'm happy that you say that, because there's only two ways that you can lose your PR: taken away or you give it up. Yeah. A lot of people, I get that all the time. Oh, my PR is expiring. I'm like, no, your card's expiring. The PR card is a travel document. I'm also going to tell you something else. You might not want to renew that if you're in Canada and you're not meeting the residency requirements and stuff, because that can actually be a bit of a cascading event there for you. So if you're actually even remotely close to that, be careful with that. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to say was there's been a backlog of citizenship applications because of the pandemic, and they are now targeting online citizenship tests. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, a couple of my clients have gotten online citizenship tests, and they've taken them, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's going to be some positives out of it. Okay, we're going to wrap up. There's a few, just really quickly. Adam. Thanks, Adam. Doing good. Yeah, everybody's super busy lately. I hear that. So thanks for throwing that in there. If anybody has any other comments, quick, we'll grab them. If not, let's wrap up. John, what do you say?
Sounds good.
What do you got going on this weekend?
Well, we're all just still here at the tail end of the pandemic, so it's stay at home. Have a beer on the deck, and walk around the neighborhood for the 14,000th time. Probably it.
It's a long weekend, buddy. Got to go out.
Yeah, but where?
Nowhere. We're on lockdown too. I'm going to be watching F1, man. That's I've rediscovered this, and if anybody is around me, I know Mara and my wife especially are probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about it. But like this weekend, Monaco, love that race. Anyways, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to stop talking about that. Okay, let's wrap it up. So, guys, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next Tuesday, because Monday is actually a holiday anyways, but we're not here. So we're here Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in. We'd love to answer them at that time. Other than that, if you want to reach out to us, feel free. You can excuse me. You can send us an email. You can throw a comment in. Or if you want to something that's a little bit more personalized, please feel free to reach out. You can do a consultation with us, whatever. Also, just wanted to draw your attention. We've got the challenge coming up on July 19th. That'll be a live version. If there's anything that you need, let us know. Thanks again, Adam, for coming out, and everybody else, Rita, Roger, MD, and Ola. Really appreciate you guys showing up. And again, we've seen you guys more than a few times, so I appreciate that. All right, John, have a good weekend, buddy.
See you, everybody.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
See you, bud.